Hello everybody and welcome to Tiger Tales, a place where you'll find stories and fanfictions written and read to you by your host, me, Tai Tiger. Well, except for today. So, Cosplay Dude 637, aka my parabatai, my business partner and best friend, has decided to relocate his stories found on Storytime with Cosplay Dude 637, a podcast where he hosted a bunch of stories. Over the course of the last year, he's been kind of advocating them to their own places. His Power Rangers storylines got put on Power Rangers Universe 19. His original story, called The Order, got placed on its own podcast. But then there's a few storylines he didn't know where to put, and he was kind of hesitant on continuing them. So I gave him an out. Put the stories on Tiger Tales. There's a few that are going on this channel. Most of them are going on this channel. One is going on Tiger Tales Game Over, and then I've given him the access to Tiger Tales whenever he feels like there's a story that doesn't exactly belong, well, anywhere that he uploads stuff. So, with that being said, this also gives him a clean slate. So now with Storytime with Cosplay Dude 637, he can either end it altogether, or he could start anew. Let's dive in with today's story. An X-Men story that Cosplay Dude has written, and he'll read to you guys now. So let's dive in. The X-Men. Chapter 1. The Recall.
In the office of Jean and Scott Summers, it was nice inside, with two desks that faced each other. The walls were lined with filing cabinets, and the desks were covered with papers. Scott sits at his desk looking over some papers. Jean walks in and sits two more papers in front of him. "You're joking me, right? 2 more enrollments?" Scott says, looking at the papers. Then to Jean. Jean smiles. "No, I'm not," she replies. "That makes 100 this week alone," Scott says, picking up the papers. "I know, and now the big question is, who is going to help us teach all of them?" Jean replies with a look of dread. In their minds, they hear the professor's voice. "Jean, Scott, please come to the rec room." The two look at each other with a weird look and then walk to the rec room holding hands. When the two arrive, they are greeted by a great surprise. Standing next to the professor was none other than the blue ball of fur, the Beast, a.k.a. Dr. Hank McCoy. "Hank!" Jean yells and runs over and hugs him. "Hello, Jean. I have missed you too," Hank returns the hug. "I don't mean to sound rude, but what are you doing here?" Scott asks. Hank gives a chuckle. "I asked him and some of the former X-Men to return," Xavier explains. "How? I thought the X-Men were no more," Jean said. "I told them I only need teachers. I would not ask them to fight again," Xavier explains. "So who's all coming back, Professor?" Hank asks. "Let me see. Storm, Wolverine, Jubilee, Rogue, Havoc." Xavier pauses and looks over at Scott. Scott just nods. "Shadowcat, Nightcrawler, Iceman, Psylocke, and Magma," Xavier says.
Hey listeners, if you like what you're hearing from Cosplay Dude 637, then you might like to hear more from the Zeo to Hero network, like the main podcast with Jimmy and I, the bulk of Scholar podcasting. Also, you might want to check out Baker Rangers on Facebook and YouTube, Iron Avenger on TikTok, Neon Lights on YouTube,
And what is the other thing?
and his other show, Fairy Tale. From Cosplay Dude 637, give it a listen.
Over the next few weeks, the former X-Men returned to the school. The last one to arrive was Alex Summers, a.k.a. Havoc, a.k.a. Scott's little brother. Alex walks through the door and yells, "Yeah, that's right, ladies. Alex is back, baby!" Bobby walks around the corner and smiles at Alex. "So what's your point, Alex? The coolest man alive is already here." Alex laughs a little, sitting his bag down. "What's up, Ice Cube? Prof asked you back too?" Bobby smiles and nods. "So, where's my big bro?" Alex asks. "The last time I saw him, he was in the danger room," Bobby replies and walks off. Rogue walks past them and bumps into Alex a little too hard. He falls over and she just keeps walking. Kitty walks over and helps him up. "What's with Rogue?" Alex asks, getting back to his feet. "Gambit's not coming back," Kitty said. Oh great, now we're going to have a pissed off Rogue, Alex said. Just like that Cajun to screw our lives, Logan says, walking up. Logan, I would watch what I say if I were you, Kitty says. Now why would I do that? He is nothing but... Logan starts to say, but is unable to finish his sentence, for just then, Rogue threw him through the double doors all the way out into the street. Alex and Kitty look at Rogue. Damn, girl! The next one to badmouth Gambit meets my fist, Rogue says and storms off. I don't know what I'm more scared of, my students or her, Alex says with a little giggle. Definitely Rogue, Kitty replies.
Hello, fellow listeners. Are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then I will begin. I'm going to read you a story of ancient beings of time and light, of group of champions flying in their metal shells, of great warriors and their epic mechs of evil villains, of darkness and terror. Come join me, the Red Cornish Ranger, as I present Nerds Through Comics, an epic telling of your classic comics and graphic novels. Please come sit comfortably and enjoy Nerds Through Comics from the Zero to Hero Network.
A week has now passed, and the school was running smoothly. Rogue sat in the professor's office. Care to tell me why you are so angry? Xavier asks. Not really, Professor, Rogue replies. Well then, let me guess. This is about Remy, Xavier says. Rogue balls up her fists. I see I am right, Xavier says. Why, Professor? Why would he not come back? Rogue asks as she tries to fight back tears. My dear, you know I cannot answer that. With his powers, if Remy does not want me to find him, I will not be able to, Xavier says. Rogue just cries into her hands. Xavier wheels over from behind the desk and lays his hands on her back. My dear child, I know you are hurt and upset. In time, I feel that you will start to feel better. A part of you will never forget Remy, but you must face it. Focus on work. The task at hand will help. I fear Mr. Lebeau will not be joining us. Rogue takes a deep breath and dries her eyes. You're right, Professor. My students need me, Rogue says, standing up and walking out. Gambit, you damn fool. You hurt that girl more by not being here, Xavier says, looking out the window. Rogue makes her way to the rec room where Kurt, Alex, Hank, Bobby, and Kitty are sitting watching the news. Rogue, have you seen this? Kitty asks, pointing to the TV. On the TV, the Avengers are battling a group of Sentinels. That should be us, Bobby shouts. I know, right? Alex adds. It is no longer our place, Hank says. I know, but we could be a team again, like the old days, Bobby said. Sugar, give it up. We aren't even all here, Rogue says. If you're talking about him, I would not get your hopes up, Bobby says. Boy, I'd run if I were you, Alex says. I'm sorry, my young friends, but we are not a team anymore, just a group of... Hank says, but is unable to finish his sentence. Group of what? Kitty says, looking back from the TV. But what she sees is a shocked look on Alex and Bobby's face. Kurt, Rogue, and Hank have vanished.
This story was written and read to you by Cosplay Dude 637. Now, this story particularly is actually re-uploaded from Storytime with Cosplay Dude 637, the podcast. When I have finished fully uploading all the chapters to this story, then the continuation of the story will also be uploaded on this channel. So make sure you subscribe so you keep up to date with all of Cosplay Dude's X-Men story. Now for our outro.
This podcast is a production of the Three Ranger Bros Studios, in association with Zero to Hero, the podcast.
And there we have it, guys. Thank you very much for listening to this story. If you've enjoyed this story, then you might want to check out all of my Tiger Tales channels. I'm going to give you a quick rundown. There's Tiger Tales, the first and the original. This is a place where you'll find stories and fanfictions diving into all sorts of fandoms, including Power Rangers, Pokemon, The Walking Dead, Marvel, DC, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and so much more. Tiger Tales The Lost Stories follows the same suit, but all the stories on that channel are in the first person perspective. Then there's Tiger Tales Game Over, a channel where all of the storylines are related to video games in some way or another. Then we have Tiger Tales X, where I write official crossovers that aren't needed but are very wanted, and crossovers I thought might work. Then, of course, we have Tiger Tales Mysterious Origins. This is the YouTube channel dedicated to my own original stories. All the stories on this channel are original and my own, and it also answers questions on certain characters throughout my stories like William Cranston, Mr. Pocket, and Ace from the Color Matrix. If you've enjoyed these storylines, then please make sure you check out the following podcasts. Storytime with Cosplay Dude 637, Power Rangers Universe 19, Sailor Moon E, and The Order. And make sure you check out 2 YouTube channels, Nostalgia Time and the One Piece audio drama. They are all written and read to you and edited by Cosplay Dude 637, my parabatai and best friend. Then make sure you check out the podcast Nerds Through Comics, which is directed by Mark, the Red Corner Ranger. This is where he adapts comic books into audio dramas and also uploads his own original Power Ranger storylines. We are the 3 Ranger Bros Studios, a collaborative project, and we are all voice actors and helpers of each other's stuff, so make sure you go check us out. We're in association with the Zero to Hero podcast, so a huge shout out to Billy and Jim, the co-hosts, and of course the podcast and the community that they lead. If we're shouting out podcasts, I have to shout out Jared, the host of If You Give It Down a Podcast. Make sure you check it out because he interviews some fantastic guests, from wrestlers to voice actors and the such. And of course, if we're talking podcasts, I have to mention my own, the Tiger Nexus podcast, where I interview content creators and geeks alike. A huge shout out to all my supporters and followers, my voice actors, the people who co-write my chapters, and the sorts. So huge thank you, and of course, a big shout out to A-Crown. Specifically him, because he helps me a lot with some of my stories, specifically the Color Matrix and the chapters that go on Tiger Tales Game Over. Thank you very much guys for listening. Now don't forget to subscribe to the channels, like the videos, and let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. With that being said, I shall see you guys in the next one.
That before we can...
Don't touch my Pringles.